Hello, everyone, and welcome to
Hello.
episode 14 of the Social Sales Engineer livestream, where we bring you the best people, ideas, thought provokers, and a sprinkle of entertainment into your sales engineering career every Wednesday. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Lydia. Great to see you. It's Wednesday again.
It's
Um,
Wednesday again.
I already get very used to you having a co-host with you. That's amazing. Yeah,
It
I like
creates this I really like this dynamic because we can and part of the the start of the show is a little bit of a follow-up. There is a continuation, an episodic sort of nature, if you will.
that. Yeah,
Things
yeah.
matter, things change.
We are creating a saga, right?
Exactly.
Like Star Wars, right, or
Yeah.
something like
We're creating a
this.
fantasy saga. Let's keep it at that. But yeah, I don't know how people, what people would think about follow-ups. But just from last episode that we had with Aaron around marketing and SE, I was really inspired by the conversation, and I, most likely need to ping Aaron and actually let him know that as a follow-up immediately from the conversation, I wrote up I'd say like a significant email to my marketing team that's allocated to the team that I'm working in right now as an SE. Just sort of pointing them to the stream and telling like, hey, I had this conversation with a VP of marketing, Aaron, at Consensus, and I want to hear what you guys think about working better together. Getting a closer relationship, and how do we as people on the ground in the field and communicating with customers, keep your message while still put our spin on it. So I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to seeing how that progresses, if it does at all. But I'll keep you guys up to date on that if anything comes from that.
Yeah, and I also got feedback, of course, to Aaron's session. It's thought provoking, right? There's
It
this
is.
huge conflict. There were messages like, "Hey, this was amazing," but I also got, and Aaron, maybe you watch. um, some people said you might have circumvented the answer a bit on when it goes. Yeah, but I get the point, right? So this is modern marketing. This is the message, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
but
I know
maybe
you like some conflict, Patrick, but I like that he provoked us enough to say, okay, maybe we need to sort of
absolutely.
look into this.
Yeah. Just the response from the episode was really interesting. Really,
Yeah, no, so thank you again, Aaron, for joining us this last week. And for if anyone wants to join on the stream as a guest, please feel free to join. Message either me or Patrick, and join us over here and get the. We promise we'll be nice. A little bit of another follow up is so, and I'm really sorry, Anwel, that I didn't react sooner. But he was very lovely to put a whole list of fantastic storytelling books. So this is The Story Factor by Annette Simmons, The Storyteller's Secret and Talk Like TED by Camille Gallo, Wired for Story by Lisa Cron, Into the Woods by John York, and my add to that list is Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. And if it's okay, Patrick, can we add it sort of in the as a comment to the LinkedIn stream and on the video, like on the YouTube stream, just so
yes,
people can see it? And
I
if you
can't
are
do it.
interested,
I can't do it from here. LinkedIn is not like supported as a destination
yeah,
to post to, but I will do this afterwards,
yeah,
and Melly will do it for the LinkedIn.
alrighty.
We will
Yeah, no,
have it in the show notes.
he just posted a fantastic list of what I think are good storytelling books. Not even for it's not pre-sales like only. It is just in general being a good storyteller in your life. So I thank you again, Anmol, for that one.
Yeah,
He
I mean
tagged me immediately
that's
after the episode, and I never actually reacted, so I feel so bad. But yeah, thank you so much.
so I think that's what the demo training actually wants to um, tell you in a very condensed way, right? But getting the basics is of course better because you can expand on that. So yeah,
Yeah,
those books are really good.
absolutely. And storytelling in general, I think, is a good skill outside of the pre-sales career. So I think nobody will lose from that skill. But yeah, no. So thanks again. And if anyone ever has like they hear us talking about something and they remember like, oh, I have this thing that I've posted a while back, let us know and we'll share it around. Just because sharing is caring, and the community gets only stronger as we share our knowledge and understanding between ourselves.
Yeah,
Um, and last thing, if Patrick would allow me to do a little bit of a self advertisement,
go
I
ahead.
was inspired by a lady called Lexi. On Twitter, she's Track and Pacer. She does networking study sessions every Monday. So she does for the Cisco Network Associate studies. And I was really inspired by that. And in my little goal section is to get a AWS certification, so I understand better cloud technologies and all of that. So I have committed myself that on every Monday at 4 p.m. UK time, I will be sitting myself on Twitch, and I will be studying together with people who are also interested in, either just listening, giving some feedback, making some points, or just, need the extra motivation to study along with someone. That's a thing that I've recently discovered is big on on Twitch. So yeah, come along. If Patrick is fine, I'll comment the link to it, and people can come and join next Monday at 4 p.m. UK time. Let's get AWS certs.
And how does it work then? You just watch each, because do you start streaming, or do you join a stream in the comment section, because somebody needs to stream?
Yeah. So I'll be streaming pretty much like my screen and myself, and like just discussing through. I don't, to be honest with you, Patrick, I still don't have a plan exactly how I want to do this. I just needed to commit myself to it because I need this external commitment to actually get stuff done, because it's not part of my role. Like, I don't need it to do my job, but I do want to keep on growing, and I do want to keep on expanding. So like my knowledge from that perspective. So I'll let you know when I figure out what I'm doing. But I think just sharing my screen and going through materials, discussing it out loud, if people are in the comment section, just to sort of, comment on that, or if they have any questions, that, let's figure it out together. So it'll be an interesting experiment. So you can join as well if you're interested in AWS and how that sort of realm of technology works.
Yeah, maybe 10 years ago or so. I mean, yeah. Don't count on me with that one.
That's why you've just sort of highlighted why we have someone fairly new to the role, who is like super like all over the place, who wants to learn everything, and someone who knows exactly what they're doing.
But yeah, that's amazing. But I just got this idea, right? We have no guests today, so we will talk about like this very provocative thing. Like, should we make up some features, capabilities when we sell as sales engineers? So I just got the idea, right? If somebody in watching wants to join, like now, write us in the chat. I think this would be possible. I can send you the link. You join in and give your opinion.
Absolutely.
Let's try this. We never tried this before. So if somebody wants, I'm open to that. Let's come in.
That would be awesome. But yeah, no, because it is I realized it's quite a controversial topic that you've picked today, Patrick. So if anyone has very strong opinions, like most likely I will, and are they want to come online, or even, again, there's nothing scary. It's just it's just us. Nobody's judging. Is that as scary? I found out when I was first a guest. There you go. Carrie already volunteered. Perfect.
There's Carrie. Oh wait.
There he is.
Now I need to find out how to invite you. Give me a second.
Brilliant. I never thought about this, Patrick. This is brilliant.
Yeah, I just thought might make sense. Carrie, I will send you a private message with the link. Okay. And you got it now. Let's see when he appears. Should work.
In the meantime, do you want to kick off the topic?
Yeah, I just can go back a bit, and you should see. So, does making up solution capabilities help you sell as a sales engineer?
What do you think, Patrick?
Pardon?
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I thought I wait for other people's opinion and then answer on that. No, seriously. I don't know. I think
I have a very strong opinion. If you want, I'll throw my towel in on the ring.
Yeah. Wait. There's Carrie.
There's Carrie.
Carrie, we will get you in now.
There you go.
Hey, Patrick. Hey, Lydia. How are you?
Hey, Carrie.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
I'm so happy that someone actually so quickly volunteered to jump on. This is amazing.
That's I thought nobody do we want a dragon? No.
It's setting a high expectation for me, Patrick.
No, because no, don't worry. We have this one is okay. Yeah, welcome. I mean, that's amazing. I thought I saw another comment from Andy.
Yeah.
So, but first, Carrie, thanks for being there. That's the beauty of today's world, right? So you can just join because it's Zoom. Your background is prepared. Everything is fine. You have been on Zoom all the day, so no worries. I mean, a lot of people will know you, but can you say can you introduce yourself a bit?
Sure, yeah. So, Kerry Sokolsky, I run an organization called Presales Mastery. We do demo coaching for pre-sales professionals to help up their game. And the co-author of the just recently released, as of yesterday, Pre-Sales Buyer's Guide. So fantastic explosion. Sort of almost, I feel like I'm a bit standing on your shoulders, Patrick, with your sales engineering map here. You know, we heard from a lot of the vendors that there was a little bit of sort of confusion in the marketplace. And so Chris White and I decided to put together this buyer's guide to help leaders make better decisions about all the new tech that's exploded in our space recently.
Yeah.
Carrie,
No, that's
please
amazing.
share a link because I haven't actually seen the book, and I'm really looking forward to actually seeing it.
Yeah, it's actually a website. We decided
okay.
to release a downloadable asset because the information is changing so quickly and so rapidly. There's new vendors joining. We wanted the ability to keep everyone up to date as quick as possible. So it's just presalesbuyersguide.com, and it's entirely open. It's free to everyone. Would love to get everyone's feedback. Feel free to check it out.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, that's amazing, and it's changing so quickly, right? So that's the reason the map also changes or is updated every month because it's like mushrooms everywhere, right? But it's a really interesting space, yeah. And I think I saw an email from Peter Cohen also. He did some investigation on the tool. I think in his newsletter he sent this out. So he was interested in that. I think Peter has some information too. Okay.
Yeah.
Are we done beating about around the bush? Should we go
yeah,
into the topic?
No.
Who do you want to go first?
If anybody out there doesn't know that there are pre-sales tools, right? which was the case a year ago, then yeah, you're really missing something.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I mean, there's been $500 million of investment over the last 2 years in this space, which is pretty remarkable. Wow. So clearly it's a priority for a lot of people now, which is great.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, yeah, we have a crazy topic today. First, Andy, sorry. There was Andy Ryan with the quote. So Carrie, that's the point with the live stream, right? We will be taking in all these comments and
love it.
People judging us or tell us where to go, right? A favorite quote of mine, tell the truth, but tell it slant, by Emily Dickinson. She finishes her poem by basically saying that the truth, if shown too directly, has the power to blind us. Oh, that's tough to swallow.
That's a really good quote.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Does anybody have a better translation for me for slant? So a synonym.
I think it's tell it from a certain perspective.
You get a different viewpoint.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool.
So that's how, as a non-native English speaker, that's how I'll translate it.
As a native English speaker, that's how I would translate it as well. So.
Yeah. Listen to Carrie.
I'm sure Andy will correct us if we've misinterpreted though. I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic, Patrick. It's a fascinating thing. I mean, I think we almost need to define what is the truth, right, in order to really dive into this, because kind of along the lines of Andy's quote, the truth can mean different things to different people. What you say your product can do when you're demoing a prospect may in fact be true when they actually go to implement it many months down the road. Right. And so are you lying by saying it's available or that it can do that when technically it can't do it today? Right. So I think that's one thing we need to sort of figure out to start is what is the truth represent?
Exactly. No, that's really good. And the thing I would add, like my view on that when I was in the field was, I'm selling a dream at the one hand, by or put it maybe less provocative. I'm showing the art of the possible, right? Showing the future and what we can do for the client to solve their pain, right? And this sometimes meant bending what you can do, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, it meant like, yeah, the market is demanding something, right? And we need to, like, we the sales engineers, the sales team who put this feedback back into product, right? And they somehow need to accept that this is the market. So I see those two forces in some way, right?
I think that's a great point. I think the fact that in a lot of organizations, pre-sales has the ability to effectively shape the roadmap means that we can almost create the truth. I remember early days in one of the startups I worked at, I was the only SE. I would go out on a sales call or demo, and I would come back from that meeting and walk into the head of product development's office and say, these are the 3 things I need you to build in the product for 2 weeks from now when I develop the POC so that we can implement that. I think that's probably not the case in most organizations aside from really small startups, but we certainly can influence the roadmap based on what we're seeing in the market.
Yeah. What I try to do with when I train this stuff, right? What I tell the people is try to pitch the product without using any function, without any feature, right? Because this is what you need to do. That's what you need to be capable of, to really show the value of what you do, because you know it, right? There's a roadmap and you're really excited. Oh, this crazy feature will come finally, right? And you promise it. Maybe you shouldn't, of course. You're not allowed, but somehow it slips through, right? And then you are there because, like, you look like a fool because it doesn't come, right? Roadmap doesn't fulfill the commitment. What now, right? So I would rather say, and that's my greatest, I think, point on that is don't rely on features, right? That's why it's controversial. I don't mind, right, if you lie or not, but don't rely on them when selling them, right?
I think that's a good point. Sorry, go ahead, Lidia.
No, thank you. I was going to say, like, I completely hear what you guys are saying when it comes to the value proposition and how do you position things, and only talking about from that perspective. Like, you listen what the actual gap or what what you're actually trying to solve for the customer there. But at the same time, it feels almost to a certain degree, and I'm not pointing any fingers at sales teams, and I'm not pointing any fingers at no, but we have this on the roadmap. You should actually talk about this. It feels there is a reliance on almost. You say that we can do this, we can do X, Y, and Z, and we'll figure it out. And that's maybe where I'm coming from, a little bit more of a, I don't want to ever have to do that. I don't want to ever have to overpromise something. And that's why when you ask that controversial question, my initial reaction is very, no, we cannot. Like, we cannot make stuff up. It is how it is. And to Carrie's conversation earlier around the truth, you can absolutely say the truth without, it doesn't have to be everything, right? Every product, every solution has all of the positives and all of the negatives, right? The parts where it's not the best at. It doesn't mean that when you sit down with the customers, like, okay, so we have limitation in the here and here and here and here. We can't do this, we can't do that. Obviously, we're not going to do that, right? Does it mean that we're lying or that we're making stuff up when we don't say it up front?
I think Patrick's got a really good point, which is if you say to them, instead of, you'd like to know if we have this particular capability or feature, what is a problem they're trying to solve with that feature? And if instead you change the discussion to, okay, this is what I think you're trying to do, here's a way that we can solve that. And it doesn't have to be dependent on the feature they've specifically asked for. And that's usually the case, right? To Patrick's point, we talk about the art of the possible. In fact, what I see a lot of my clients do is take that to the extreme, which I think is to their detriment, where they actually give multiple ways to do things. And I think that actually hurts us, because we should be the trusted experts that are leading people down the path and providing our suggested way to do it based on what we know of what they're trying to accomplish. But I think if you can really get to that underlying business challenge that they're looking for, most people, assuming that your workaround or your way of doing it isn't completely onerous and difficult, are probably going to say, oh, okay, that's fine. As long as you can accomplish what I'm looking to do, I don't care that you can change this color green or purple, right?
Mhm.
A quote I keep on hearing from far senior colleagues in my team is, "A confused mind always says no." So to your point about you always have to you have to lead people and be the trusted advisor in that sense. You can't say, "Oh, we can do everything and bring you coffee at the same time." You have to say, "This is what I think you should be doing from what we've discussed from problems so far."
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really resonating from that perspective.
I have actually one more quote. I read this recently. Do I have the book here? Yes, I want to show the book. Give me a second. Because it's from here. I don't want to steal this. Because I like this. I read this over the last week or so. The Qualified Sales Leader. I think it's a self-published book by John McMahon, right? And he was 5 times CRO. It's pretty good. And he says something that's struck with me. He doesn't speak about sales engineers in here, but he says you get relegated down to the personal hierarchy you speak like, right? So when you're using technical terms, when you're selling, you will get down to the technical people, and you need to talk about all this stuff, right? So it's really up to you also where you play your game. And in a certain way, you can shape it, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really
Like
interesting. Yeah, I like that quote. I think the other thing too that we probably should think about is the fact that, you know, telling the truth when it relates to a negative isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, I don't think we should offer up unsolicited negative information about our company or solution or ourselves, but if someone is directly asked, if directly asked a question, the answer is no, we can't do that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to say that. I mean, part of being a trusted expert is to be honest, right? And so the worst thing we can do in completely eroding our credibility is get caught in any lie whatsoever, right? Whether it's in the meeting itself or later on when we've destroyed the company's credibility because we overpromised in the sales cycle and we just cannot deliver whatsoever after they've signed the dotted line. So I think it's really important that we make sure that we recognize that the truth can be a good thing. I remember, and this is just an interesting side note, one of the earlier companies I was involved in, our CEO went on his first customer roadshow and visited a couple dozen clients. And he came back with some really interesting feedback for our pre-sales team, which was we needed to stop saying that our solution was easy. And the reason why that was important was the prospects and the customers didn't care whether or not it was actually easy. We were telling it was a solution that as long as you had sort of deep Excel knowledge and database knowledge, you could sort of do it on your own as a business user. You didn't need to involve IT. And that was oversimplifying things. And what the customers found was you actually did need to have some additional technical skills. And so they weren't prepared to implement our solution because they didn't have the right people on the team. And they said to us, if you had told us exactly the skill sets that we need and were honest with us, we just would have hired those people or made sure the people we assigned to this project were properly accredited. And we would have not had so many issues at the start. And all you need to do is be honest with us. We don't care that it's not the hardest thing to do. And so I think we intuitively think that the second we say something about our solution that it's a limitation or can't do, it's a bad thing for us and it's going to hurt us in the sales cycle. And that's not always true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I fully agree, because where you can differentiate today as a sales engineer is telling customers the problems they will face in implementing software in general and your software, right? That you need to go through the pain of, efficiency will go down because there's something new to learn, right? So it will hurt, but you need to do that to go through the next phase of your process or your heightened whatever, right? Whatever improves. And this is something we have knowledge as sales engineers, or we can at least get them from professional services or customer success, right? And I think that's really a differentiator if you can talk about this, right? How will the implementation run? Definitely. I completely agree.
This is striking a chord, Kiri, because I just today had to push back on a messaging that we're putting for a product that I'm currently selling in the moment, which was exactly like, oh, all you need is this basic skill to be able to do that. And I like my hair stood up. I'm just like, no, like just don't do that. Don't say that. This is why we're having like these problems with X, Y, and Z product, because it's not over promising. And I think this is also because when we say making up capabilities, is the capabilities of the product, right? It can do, as I said earlier, like, it can do all of these things and also make you coffee. But it's also, is it making stuff up when we're saying that something is a lot easier than it actually is, or that we see it as easier than it actually is? What do you guys think?
First of all, I want to bring in Andy's.
Oh.
You never recover from a lie. Yeah.
True.
And I think this answers your question in some way, Lidia, or?
Yeah, I think so. Well, do you guys agree in that sense of you need to be honest with people how difficult it is actually going to be? Similar to Kerry's story with the customer actually had a positive spin on it. They actually helped them in the long term.
I would say you need to be, like Kerry said, you need to state exactly what will going to happen, but leave the judgment to the client, right? Because that's what's happening. You're judging before out of your whatever experience, but maybe, and if you go one more step forward, you could even say you didn't slow down enough at the beginning of the deal, right? You didn't do discovery to that end that you really understood what you're doing when you're saying it's easy, right? So then you're prematurely like pitching something and you don't know, is this actually hitting a chord, right?
Yeah.
With the customer in that sense. So no, and don't say it's difficult, but say the truth, or say exactly what's going to happen, and then leave the judgment to the customer.
I think that's a really, really good point, Patrick. This is how we do it, and you can make the assumption whether that's difficult or not for you.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of an engagement plan, even as sales engineers. Lay out your processes, right? Say, we will have discovery together, then I want additional interviews, then we will do scoping, and after scoping, we will do a POC, POV, whatever scenario, right? And if you bring this up front, say, this is how we make you successful, most clients will at least agree or are biased towards the process, and you're kind of in control, right? So those are really tools pre-sales sales engineers can use, right? Oh, there's a question from Anchita Verma. Helps build credibility in the long run. Yeah, so I think she refers to Andy's not to lie or tell the truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think is interesting too, that I think is a really good technique that a lot of pre-sales folks use is simply asking the prospect during the meeting, how do you feel this might work for you? Right? It's a good open-ended question. It gets them engaged, and it tends to solicit pretty honest feedback, which is something we necessarily struggle to get from our prospects some of the time, right? And it allows you to course correct during your demo. But you'll find out very quickly if this will seem like it's too complex for them, or it's something they can't do, or it's not going to fit their needs. And I think too few people do that, unfortunately, is really sort of take their temperature, because your point is valid, Lydia. It's, we might think it's really easy, but for the viewer's eyes, it's not. And I think that translates to everything we do when we're presenting. I talk about what I call the familiarity trap, which is basically my terminology for the curse of knowledge, which is we're all so familiar with our solutions and our space and our domains that we tend to under-explain things, whether it's how a product works or how the problems we're solving, or we use jargon that the prospect or part of the audience just doesn't understand. And it's not that we necessarily need to dumb it down, but I think a lot of the times we do. We need to make sure that we're communicating in a way that our prospects and our clients can truly understand us. And I don't think that you can really understand if they are getting what you're saying unless you are checking in with them on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, and why do you think, Kerry, or Lydia, of course, why do you think pre-sales don't ask their client?
We're scared of the negative answer. It's absolutely fear. It's fear of getting at least for myself, right? If I ask these open-ended question of, does it make, like, not does it make sense, but what do you think this is going to be easy for you guys? Is it going to be approachable for you guys from a technology perspective? And if the answer is no, help, right? You're stuck.
Yeah, I think that's a really accurate point, Lydia. I think I look at it a little bit differently, having run a bunch of sales or pre-sales teams before, in that I actually think those situations are amazing learning experiences for us as sellers, where we are now going to realize, okay, I ran into a roadblock. I don't have an answer for that. And instead of just saying, no, we can't do that, I like to defer and say, I'm actually not sure what the best approach is for that, but let me get back to you on that and do a little bit more discovery, find out exactly what their use case is, exactly what they're looking to accomplish, and then give yourself the opportunity to go back into your broader organization, pull in all the other experts and get an answer, and then go back to the customer again and make sure you're following up very timely and whatever, even if it is not necessarily the right answer for them. But what it does is it equips you with another tool in your tool belt that when that objection or that question comes up next time, you now know how to handle it. And so I look at questions where we're stumped as actually great experiences. It may not seem great at the time where you're like, ew, I don't know, but that's actually not a bad thing. And it also tells the prospect that you are being honest. You're not otherwise telling them something that's not true, because when they did stump you, you didn't give them some rote answer that isn't necessarily true. It's that you're admitting you don't know everything. You're going to get back to them. So it builds credibility.
No, that's amazing. And Lydia, you can even make a game out of this, right? So because from a sales perspective, what you do is you're hunting objections, and you want them as early as possible in the deal cycle. The last thing you want is that you ask this in one of the final meetings, right? Is the technology actually a problem? Yes. And then what? Why didn't you say earlier, right? You didn't ask. So hunt those objections down, right? Get them as early as possible. So maybe this takes away the fear, because you're actually looking for that feedback, right?
That's a really good approach. And I think especially for new people coming into the role, this whole we're very, and it's again, no detriment to anyone training me or training new SEs coming into a role, but nobody ever teaches you how to actually handle the stress of the objection, because it's not nice to, you believe so hard in the thing, especially again, new person coming into the pre-sales, like, you want to believe in what you're selling, you want to believe in what you're doing, and then somebody turns around and says like, no, what you're doing doesn't make sense to me. That's just dreadful. Especially the first 5-10 times. Obviously, over time, you gain the experience of how to deal with it, but handling it in a gamified way, Patrick, that's a really nifty idea. I might actually use that. I put it on for my next follow-up.
No, great if it works. I just think Andy wrote a huge message. And Andy, do you want to join too? And Kyle, if you want, tell us if you want to be part of this. Yeah, we have a lot of room. I think we can take some people. Let's fill it up today with voices. I love this.
This is really cool, Patrick. I absolutely have to do this.
Andy, let me know if you want.
I don't want to steal his thunder if he's joining, but he does have a great point about you need to, a lot of the time, manage your sales counterpart to make sure they're not undermining whatever you're going to say.
Sure, Andy wants. Okay. Kyle, what about you?
Awesome.
You wrote something too.
Let's hide then Andy's point so he can say it.
Yeah.
In person. Whilst we're waiting for Andy to join, I do want to mention another thing, Carrie, that you said about the curse of knowledge, and especially for people working in larger organizations like myself, it is so easy to remain in your corporate bubble and using the acronyms and thinking that everyone is on the same wavelength as you. My suggestion with that is explain what you're doing and what you're selling to your mom and dad, or some other relative in your family that is unrelated to technology, because that is so easy to understand. And what you're saying is not dumbing it down, it's making it in plain English. And I think that's a huge part of our role, of explaining complicated things simply. Back to the previous quote.
You're spot on. I use the same analogy, Lydia. I use a grandparent as my example, but it's exactly the same point that you have. And it isn't dumbing down. It's plain English. You need to use plain language to connect with people appropriately. And the second you start to try and highbrow it and get overly technical or overly specific is when you start to lose people. So yeah, great point.
Then let's bring in Kyle. He didn't answer. If you want to join. So Kyle says, break it down to 3 components. Let the audience prioritize halfway to a solution. Kyle, I'm not sure I get it.
Yeah, I'm a
Let the
little
audience prioritize. Okay. Or was this maybe on Andy's message?
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point.
Let's see. Let me take this out again. I sent Andy the link. Maybe he's preparing his background now. Okay. No, I love this. I have another use case because I'm not sure I get it either.
We're all figuring it out, Kyle.
Kyle, if you want to join the conversation and explain it,
that's great.
I will send you the link. There's one point that just comes into my mind. What if, and I have this currently with one client, what if you are placed in the Gartner MQ, but in a not so good spot? And then the customer asks, oh, why are you left, right? Why are you that far on the left so you don't even see it anymore that way? Isn't that similar? What do you do?
Well, I think it comes down to what is the left quadrant you're in, right? Or is it, and why are you in that quadrant? Is it because you don't have, because I think Gartner's quadrants are feature, function, capability, and sort of success of implementation, or how reliably you can sort of implement. And so the feature function gap is one that I think is probably more along the lines of what we're talking about now. The implementation gap's a challenging one for us because very infrequently are we involved in the implementation or responsible for it. And I think what I've seen really successfully done is a lot of software organizations have services sellers that join the calls to talk about specifically how they're going to make that prospect successful once they actually start to implement. And that's all they've experienced being a part of the implementations. They're much more able to talk to it intelligently. And so if that's a role that exists in your organization, I would say try and know that that's going to be a problem up front. And I think that's probably one of the biggest learnings is know your limitations, know your company's limitations, know your product's limitations, know your personal limitations before you get in that room so that you are better prepared to handle these things. I think if it's a functional gap that's out there, then hopefully you've got ways that you can work around that, right, and address it. I think, for any of us that have been involved in Gartner Market Scopes or similar types of exercises, it's, how the analyst interprets what your solution can do and what it can actually do. A lot of times there's a gap there. And so I think there's ways around that.
Yeah, and in this case, it's actually being a niche player. So it's okay, right? Everything is all right. It's just, you just need to proactively, most of the time, go out and say, look, I know you will come across this, so let me explain proactively what it means, right? So this is just being aware. The same with your features or capability. I think it's the same we just discussed, right? If you know of limitations, go out and be proactive and explain why they exist.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, because I think what it does is it builds your credibility, and it takes them off the table, to your point, Patrick, way earlier in the sales cycle, so that they're not a challenge later on. I'll give a really interesting story. So at one of my older organizations, one of our ex-employees left and went to a competitor. And we found out in the middle of one of our sales cycles, we were killing it. We were doing great. We were going to be the selected vendor, but the internal champion called us up and said, look, I've gotten an email from your competitor, and it calls out these 10 things they said that you guys can't do or you don't do well. And we love your solution. We'd really like to go with you, but we'd be, remiss if we didn't at least address the fact that this came across our desk, and we'd like you to sort of, deal with this. Now, luckily for us, we had already dealt with all of those particular objections. And so we said, we're very happy to talk to them, and we knocked them off one at a time. And then we actually said to this individual, do us a favor, don't tell this competitor that you spoke to us about that, because we actually want them to tell everybody else that we have these limitations when we know we don't. And so what it allowed us to do is go into all of our discovery calls and our early demos for the next 6 months and proactively knock these so-called objections or deficiencies off the table, so that when they did get brought up by the competitor, they lost all credibility because we'd already proven that they weren't an issue. So I think your point, Patrick, about being proactive about this stuff is a huge, huge, huge point.
You did your discovery, you did your scoping, so there's nothing else you really need to fear, right? That's pretty cool. And there's Andy. Good to see you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see everybody. Carrie, nice to see you again.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone knows each other, and I'm just the new kid on the block. I'm just excited to talk to everyone.
Yeah.
It's a small community. It's a big community, but it's a small community, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Andy, do you want to say some words about you?
Yeah, sure. I've been doing the sales engineer thing for well over 25 years, I'll tell you that, and been around the block a few times for sure. So yeah, really enjoy the career that I chose, and now I'm kind of transitioning out of that individual contributor, team leader position into more of a mentorship kind of a role, where I'm looking to spread all the quote unquote knowledge that I've sort of put into my brain over the last 25 years and get it out of my brain and into somebody else's brain. So,
is it the generativist?
Yeah, yeah.
That I read today.
Yeah. I discovered that word, and I'm like, that's perfect for me. So, yeah.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, Patrick.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
We need to check out the layouts because we don't see your name. Let me see. Oh, that's only me. No, that's the wrong one.
Patrick is just trying to steal the spotlight. In the meantime, Andy, do you want to? You have a fantastic comment, and I will keep on trying not to reread it, trying to address it.
Sure.
Do you want to cover that off?
Yeah, in my experience, when we're partnered with, as a sales engineer, we're typically partnered with an account executive when we go out on these sales calls and visit our customers. And what sometimes we don't understand is they have different fears than we have. And their fear, like I made in the comment, generally is a fear of losing the deal. And they're generally bred to do whatever they can possibly think of to not lose the deal. But what they don't understand sometimes is that credibility is one of those things that causes you to lose a deal. And they don't sometimes get that. And so they will introduce, I'm not pointing fingers, or I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything, but what they will sometimes introduce is a falsehood or stretch the truth a little bit and inadvertently put us as sales engineers into predicament, right? And our predicament is now to either sort of defend what they said, contradict what they said completely, or find some middle ground, right? And it goes to, I think, some of the things that Carrie was talking about earlier is how we kind of have to shift the conversation into, well, what do you mean by that? Why is that important to you? Kind of get into the business value, all those kinds of things. But I think one of our jobs as a sales engineer is to help account executives understand that credibility is just as important, and to make sure we weave that into our coaching of our sales counterparts.
That's great. And what do you do when you are asked to lie, right? So in terms of, hey, come on, Andy, right? It's on a roadmap, right? We could say, and they will buy you, it's just a feature, right?
Yeah, I mean, it starts in the planning, right? I mean, if you are a good partner with your account executive, then you're taking steps ahead of time to plan out that meeting, right? And in that planning session, if you're doing it right, then those conversations won't happen in front of the customer. So that the key to all of that, right, is making sure you're building a trust relationship with your sales counterpart, but also making sure in your planning sessions ahead of your meeting that you know exactly what that person's going to say and what you're going to say and how you're going to work that thing together.
And just from your experience, what are good questions to my sales counterpart when we prepare? What would you advise to ask?
That's great. Great question. And from my experience, it depends, I think, upon the maturity and the level of salesperson that you're dealing with in some cases. So there's context there that needs to be established for sure. But it's really around making sure that all the questions that you're asking are driving towards the goal of the meeting, whatever the goal of that meeting is, right? If the goal is to get a next meeting, great. Then all your questions that you're going to ask your salesperson and you're going to come up with together are going to be towards that goal. If it's to get them to sign the paperwork, to sign on the dotted line, as it were, then those are the kinds of questions that you need to be directing your salesperson. And by the way, vice versa, that person needs to be directing you towards in order to achieve that goal.
I think I'd throw out two other points. One is, whenever we're in prep meetings with our sales counterparts, too often I think it is way too focused on us in pre-sales. What are you going to show in the demo? What are the features you're going to show? And I think it's just as, if not more important, to understand what the sales account exec is going to show in their presentation to start. What's in your deck? Let's go over your slides, because I need to make sure that whatever you're presenting is consistent with what we are going to or are able to show in the product afterwards. So I think it's really got to be a two-way street. I think that's the first thing that's really important there. I think the other thing too is, and I coached my SEs when I was a pre-sales leader to do this, is be more assertive and confident in your role in the sales team, right? And that is, I would advocate that they said to their sales reps, look, if there is a technical question, I'm the person that addresses it, not you. And if you have a question, message me on Slack or text me or whatever to see if there's an answer to that. But the one thing you can't really recover from, and Andy made this point earlier, is you can't recover from a lie. And so if the sales rep throws out an answer that's not true, it's almost impossible to recover from that. You can recover from an omission, right? If the sales rep thought of something that you didn't say that they thought maybe the solution could do, there's no harm in going back later after the meeting when they've talked to you about it and saying, oh, by the way, during the meeting, you had called out or questioned or asked about this particular topic. We did some research and we actually can do this, right? And so going back later is not a problem, but coming back from that lie is almost impossible.
And Carrie, to follow up on that point, because of COVID, we're no longer sitting in the same room. So I no longer have the ability to kick the sales guy under the table.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah, very valid.
I started during the pandemic, Andy, and I haven't been able to have that glory of kicking someone under the table yet. But I'm looking forward to it at some point. But first of all, this is just you guys are a gold mine for new people coming in. And Carrie, you highlighted such a huge problem that I'm personally facing, and this is the whole assertiveness. So how do you know, or how do you? Because SE is in a funny place in most organizations, aren't they? Because it's the account managers, the salesperson associated that are responsible for the deals, that are responsible for the target. It's absolutely a shared weight. We're both responsible from that perspective, but it always feels like they're the owners of it in that sense, where you're just sort of piggybacking after them. It's like, oh, I need to do X, Y, and Z to get the deal through. Good, great. And what you said, most of the conversations, what are you going to do for me? The salesperson, that I can, make this deal happen. So when you're saying we need to be more assertive, Is there any tips or any recommendations you would give someone like me, starting now fairly to get into that assertiveness? And more importantly, just because, the best way to deal with this is to have some sort of guardrails. Like, what is the point where you go too far and you become the salesperson as well as the SE?
Yeah, so it's a great and it's a really valid point, Lydia, and it's really interesting. The organization I grew up in pre-sales in, I didn't experience this. We were a true partner in the sales process. If anything, we were the secret sauce in the organization. We were looked at as more important than the sales reps. It wasn't until I left that organization that I started to realize that was the anomaly. And too many organizations, pre-sales is a utility. We're pulled off the shelf, right, when we need a demo and thrown back on after it's done. And we're not
my
a
favorite
true
term,
partner in
a
sales.
technical resource. We're a technical resource.
A resource.
Yeah, we're not a resource. We are a valued partner in the organization. I think the one piece of advice I would offer is that the best way to get through to sales reps, in my experience, is to impress upon them that the more successful they make us in pre-sales, the more successful they're going to be. If we can do our job better, because you're giving us the ability to join your discovery calls, to prepare accordingly for all your deals, to align and make sure that we're on the same page in our meetings, to strategize before and after our meetings with them, then they're going to be more successful. They're going to make more money. And so it's in their best interests to make us as successful as possible. And if they're undermining us during our meetings or beforehand, or putting a meeting on our calendar for 15 minutes from now with zero prep time, they're not going to hit their numbers. And that's the one technique I've seen be the most effective in my experience. But I'm sure there's lots of them, but that one seems to resonate with a lot of sales reps in my experience.
Thank you.
I've one more thing for you, Lydia. That's also very practical. It's 2 questions. When you prepare with the sales rep, you ask, why will we win this deal? Right? Tell me, why will we win? So you probe the preparedness of the sales rep. And the other one, what will the CIO think once he leaves our meeting? So replace CIO with the highest level executive that's in the meeting. So you get the goals, right? And you know exactly what you want to place in their head to accelerate the deal, right? So those are the 2 things. Very tactically.
Yeah. Both of those were awesome.
Any advice from you?
Yeah, I mean, like Carrie, I was privileged when I first began my SE journey. I was privileged to work in a company that, like Carrie, was true partnership, right? The CEO of that company found the value of the SE to be extremely powerful in winning business. And so I had the opportunity to kind of go through that. But then obviously in later years, kind of similar to the other stories where it wasn't treated, we were treated more as a technical resource. And, really the advice to be assertive, I mean, it matches right up with what Carrie was saying. I mean, we have to, the value that we bring is almost, it's almost intangible in some cases, right? But it's palpable, right? Which is, you can look at data that says if the SC was involved in the deal, the deal closed, or you have better success when an SE wasn't involved. And you can actually pull that data out and use that as your foundation to come in and have those discussions with your account executives and more importantly, the sales leadership team, right? Because it has to be behavior. It's great to change the behavior of the rep that you're supporting, but it's also important to change the behavior of the sales leadership if they're not in line with this belief that the SEs are just as an important part of the organization as the sales teams.
Cool. Carrie, that reminds me of what we, I think, spoke about on LinkedIn today with the coaching and your statistics, right? So coaching is as important as the SE on the deal, right? So in some sense, that's just a correlation I just had, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, as managers, our job is not to be the star; it's to make our team the stars. And I personally feel that literally the best use of managers' time is to coach their team up. right? And regardless of what it is, whether it's how to interface and interact with their account execs to this topic, or it's how to deliver a demo or how to do discovery. But that coaching is really what's going to make a force multiplier effect, where you as a leader don't have to be on every call in order for it to be successful. You don't have to be exec sponsoring every deal for it to actually be a win. You can turn your team into the winners themselves. And so, yeah, if you're not doing coaching, you need to start.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great one. And it feels like, and this is the point in some way. Having the SE on the deal is like coaching a team, right? So you need both, and you will be the numbers. Maybe the numbers are even equal. You said I think 73% or so improved. What was it? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, 73% of sales leaders spend less than 5% of their time coaching. And so if you've got a team of 5 people, you're spending less than 1% of your time coaching your individuals per person. And that's insane when there's lots of research to show that coaching is the single biggest impact on improving performance and win rates.
I'll say though, Kerry, it's hard. Like I was a leader as well, and I fell into that 1 to 5% mark simply because the organizations that I was part of had this sort of philosophy about managing up rather than managing down, right? And that philosophy of managing up, it's really hard to coach in those kinds of environments. But when I did have the opportunity, I will say it was literally the most rewarding part of being a sales engineering leader, was doing that part of it. So,
yeah, great.
Sorry,
and times the problem.
Maybe a little bit of a silly question. Sorry, Kerry, but what do you mean by when you say managing up rather than managing down?
Right. So in a situation where you're managing up, you are driven by behaviors that feed into executive leadership that are saying, give me numbers, give me this, give me that, rather than the opposite, which is go manage your team towards success. So if I'm managing my team downward, meaning I'm focused directly on them and not necessarily on the executive team. I'm following strategy and stuff, of course, but not focused on the executive team specifically. The effect of that managing down, which some management teams don't see, is if I'm successful managing down, then they'll be successful, in their numbers and whatever else they're trying to do from a strategy perspective. So it's kind of this, the emphasis is on your team rather than the emphasis being on your senior leadership.
Understood. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, a nice one. I mean, I think this was a good wrap up, wasn't it? This was spontaneous. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, sure.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for joining.
Anytime.
All right. So we will take you out of the stream now, and Lydia, we close the show. Or thank you very much, guys.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, and we'll absolutely take you guys up on the offer to join again.
Yeah, I think this was amazing. We should do this more often, like getting people in.
Absolutely. I think especially when it's planned to be the two of us only, this is absolutely what we can do. We can open the floor to anyone who wants to join, and just judging by how well Kerry and Andy practically carried the stream, and I've learned so much, and absolutely, like, this is such a joy to do every time. But yeah, no, absolutely. Any leaving notes from you, Patrick?
No, I think this was a great show. I mean, we started without a guest, we ended with 2 guests, and a great topic. So I love it. Very nice.
Absolutely. And thank you for everyone in the comments. It's absolutely, this is why we do the live stream, is to get people talking and to get them involved. And as it turns out, it's actually quite easy to just get them on board as well and just talk to us. So absolutely, I think we're going to be doing more of this in the future. Fantastic idea, Patrick, really. And I guess just as a call to action at the end, if you want to get in touch with us, please do so. We don't bite. You can connect to me on LinkedIn. You can connect to Patrick on LinkedIn. You can find me on packetmage.com or at packetmage on Twitter. Patrick, anywhere else people? You can also find the stream on YouTube. You can just look
YouTube,
up the
please subscribe. The Social
yeah.
Sales Engineer. I'm on
We-
Medium. Find my posts there and on LinkedIn, of course. And it was such a pleasure having you all here. And we see us next week.
Absolutely.
Do we know what we do next week? No.
No, it's a surprise.
Perfect, even for us.
Brilliant.
Then Lydia, see you next week. And
See you next week, Patrick.
everybody else.
Have a nice one, everyone.
Bye-bye.